Translator, Dark Angel, Kurisulu. Yu Tong stepped forward and enrolled her name. Aside from her, Kan Yi and Zhao Huan also came up to register. After all, within Huyang Academy, there was still quite a sizable number of disciples at the Gushing Spring tier. The temptation of obtaining a mystical power was utterly extraordinary. So long as there was even the faintest sliver of hope, they all wished to give it a try. Especially since, if they were swift enough, they could fling their competitors far behind and leave them choking on dust. Thus, it was acceptable even if they were slightly lacking in battle prowess. Ling Han caught sight of Sun Ziyan, and the latter forced a smile in his direction. Then he immediately turned and left. It felt as though an age had passed since Sun Ziyan once believed Ling Han unworthy of regard. Yet it had only been 1 or 2 months, and now he had to address Ling Han respectfully as Grandmaster. Such a vast gap made him unable to face Ling Han and speak with him at all. Ling Han merely smiled. He naturally would not lower himself to Sun Ziyan's level. However, if the other continued to be blind, then he would simply have to casually stomp him into the ground. Feng Yan's here, someone cried out, and everyone present turned around to look. Sure enough, Feng Yan strode over with great, forceful steps. With every step he took, a silver-colored dazzling light actually appeared beneath his foot. Each step birthed a bright flare, as if he were a god walking the mortal earth. The spiritual ocean tier, someone exclaimed in shock. A spiritual ocean tier elite could release their martial intent beyond their bodies, or engrave it into a weapon to become a spirit tool, or draw it upon talisman paper to form spirit talismans. For martial artists, this was an immensely crucial stage. Within Rain Country, there was no lack of Gushing Spring martial artists. The great clans all had their share, but further up the ladder, there were pitifully few martial artists at the spiritual ocean tier. Higher still, those at the spiritual pedestal tier were rarer yet. Thus, the spiritual ocean tier could be regarded as the true mid-level pillars of Rain Country, or even of the 9 nations of the desolate north. Anyone who stood at this cultivation could be called a powerful warrior. Feng Yan was only 24 years old, yet he had shockingly reached the spiritual ocean tier. This was astonishing beyond measure, and in the history of Rain Country, he could unquestionably be ranked within the top 10, perhaps even higher. However, those spiritual ocean tier martial artists could release their martial intent beyond their bodies. It consumed energy. Who would do such a thing without reason? Feng Yan had deliberately arrived late, and his meaning was plain. He did not place the Rain Emperor in his eyes, and he began releasing his martial intent the instant he appeared, using it as both a display of ability and an attempt to humiliate Ling Han. Spiritual ocean tier against gushing spring tier. Wouldn't that be absolute, one-sided domination? The mystical power would belong to him, and whether Ling Han was killed or grievously wounded would depend entirely on his mood in that moment. Indeed, aside from Ling Han and Hun Yu, every participant's expression changed drastically. Against an elite of the spiritual ocean tier, what gushing spring martial artist could even muster the courage to fight? Ling Han! Feng Yan's domineering gaze swung toward him. I never thought you would actually become a black-grade, high-level alchemist. I'll give the Alchemists Association some face and not kill you. I'll only cut off your 2 legs. After all, you only need your hands to concoct alchemical pills. The moment these words fell, a storm of protest surged through the crowd. In all of Rain Country, the only one who would dare threaten a black-grade high-level alchemist like this was probably Feng Yan alone. Even the Rain Emperor had to be polite to such a great boss of alchemy. Mad. He truly was mad. Ling Han smiled calmly and said, I once cut off your younger brother's 2 arms, so I can't make an exception for the elder brother. Then I'll have to cut off both your arms and legs. Whew. The others all wiped the cold sweat that had gathered on their foreheads. These 2 were indeed hot-tempered. From the very first moment, they had already ruthlessly declared their intent to cripple one another. Feng Yan laughed loudly, then said darkly, You're merely in the Gushing Spring tier. How do you plan to fight me? Fine. Today I'm definitely going to cripple you. Where do you find so much nonsense to spout? Are you a chatterer? Ling Han asked with disdain. Yet Feng Yan did not grow angry. He withdrew his martial intent. He could not bear maintaining that state for long. A cold smirk hooked the corners of his lips. Today, he would seize a mystical power and cripple Ling Han's legs as interest. Afterward, he would still kill Ling Han. So long as no one discovered it, it would be fine. An alchemist's status only made others not dare kill Ling Han in public. He would be celebrated, and Ling Han would not only have to swallow the bitter outcome, he would also have both legs crippled. Even if they were reattached, his legs would be far less nimble than before, meaning only darkness lay ahead on his martial path. Once Feng Yan had arrived, no one else dared to register. They had all been frightened off by his vicious might. He was now in the spiritual ocean tier, practically invincible. However, at this very moment, a short young man walked over. A shy smile hung on his face as he said, "I would like to register." Ling Han's eyes narrowed. Yan Tianzhao! The first time Ling Han saw Yan Tianzhao, this youth had given him an incredibly evil feeling. The second time they met, that evil air was still there, yet Ling Han was no longer able to see through him. This was the third time, and Ling Han still could not see through him, as though a layer of fog shrouded this person. Much like who knew? Hold on. A thought suddenly flashed through Ling Han's mind. Could it be, who are you? Tell me your name, age, and show me your cultivation level. Zaixiang's manner was strict and all business. His voice was cold and unfeeling. Yan Tianzhao, 15 years old. The young man looked a little embarrassed. As for cultivation level, he extended his right hand, and Hong, a green-colored dazzling light flashed, forming an intricate pattern beneath his palm. Everyone sprang to their feet in an instant. This was martial intent, the spiritual ocean tier. Gods, there's another spiritual ocean tier elite, and he's only 15 years old. I thought it was already miraculous enough for a 24-year-old to be in the spiritual ocean tier. At least, no such person had appeared in the last 300 years in Rain Country. Who knew my shock hadn't even passed when a 15-year-old spiritual ocean tier appeared? Judging by him, he's definitely not even 20 yet. Even if he were 20, being in the spiritual ocean tier at that age is already unbelievable enough. Is he also a citizen of Rain Country? Yan Tianzhao. Does anyone know which clan this genius comes from? Not only did the crowd's jaws drop, even the Rain Emperor subtly straightened and sat upright upon his throne. There was actually such a martial genius in Rain Country. The envoys from the other 8 nations were likewise dumbstruck, and at the same time felt an incredible dread. This generation of Rain Country was truly a bit too awesome, wasn't it? In alchemy, there was a 17-year-old great boss, and in martial arts, there were 2 spiritual ocean tier elites. Did this mean Rain Country would leave them all behind in the dust and dominate the other 8 nations? Yan Tianzhao turned, sweeping his gaze across Ling Han and Feng Yan. The childishness and bashfulness on his face vanished without a trace, and he released an aura belonging only to a powerful elite, domineering and evil. Feng Yan instantly grew solemn. He was proud, but not foolish. Even if Yan Tianzhao had only just broken through to the spiritual ocean tier, Feng Yan had no advantage in terms of cultivation. Moreover, Yan Tianzhao was only 15. A 15-year-old in the spiritual ocean tier, he had never heard of such a person and had never even dared imagine that someone like this could truly exist. Meanwhile, Ling Han sighed inwardly. Indeed, another monster had appeared by his side. Compared to the Asura Demon Emperor, Yan Tianzhao was no longer important enough for him to take seriously. Ronghuan Xuan was the true person he dreaded facing now. Very quickly, Yan Tianzhao's background was discovered. He was the only son of Lady Yan of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion, and had once been in a coma for 10 years. A young man who had been in a coma for 10 years, yet instantly broke through to the spiritual ocean tier upon awakening? I want to sleep like this for 10 years too! There was definitely going to be a good show today. At first, Feng Yan had been the sole outstanding figure, but now it had become a fierce battle between 2 equally powerful contenders. Ling Han merely smiled without speaking. There was still himself and Hu Nu to be counted as well. Translator Dark Angel, editor Kurisu. At the beginning, when Feng Yan strode forth as a spiritual ocean tier powerhouse, he was like an unrivaled war god descending upon mortal dust. Peerless, solitary, the sole champion whose might could press all around him until their brilliance turned wan and pale. Though Ling Han too shone with glory, that radiance came from the Tao of alchemy. His cultivation of the first layer of the gushing spring tier was utterly unremarkable amid the Rain Country's younger generation. Yet the instant Yan Tianzhao appeared, all of Feng Yan's limelight was snatched away as though swept off the stage by a single sleeve. A 15-year-old in the spiritual ocean tier. This was even more shocking. Still, that was no bad thing. What was the point of a lone man performing upon an empty stage? Only when tigers and dragons contend does the blood truly stir. Feng Yan fixed his gaze on Yan Tianzhao, and a faint knot formed between his brows. He had to prevent Yan Tianzhao from being the first to reach the peak, and at the same time cripple Ling Han's legs. In a blink, the difficulty had surged sharply upward. Yan Tianzhao stood off to one side, the corners of his lips curled into an evil smile. His expression was wholly unlike that of a youth who was only 15 years of age. Liu Yu Tong was struck dumb. She had personally witnessed that bashful, delicate Yan Tianzhao. Never had she imagined this young man could step into the spiritual ocean tier within a short few months. Moreover, that sinister aura alone was enough to make her hair stand on end. All were making their final preparations, waiting for the tournament to begin. After another half an hour had passed, the Rain Emperor nodded and proclaimed, "Get ready to start." Xie Chang rose and said, "The registration period is now over. The rules for the competition are as follows. There is to be no use of spirit tools or alchemical pills. You must not use any spirit talismans or decrees as well. In short, you may only make use of your own personal ability. Technically, you are not supposed to wound anyone. However, weapons are blind, so even if anything does happen, it would be unavoidable. If you do not want to get injured, you still have the time to withdraw now. Is there anyone who is unclear about anything? Immediately raise your questions now." When his words fell, not a single voice rose. Then, when I count to 3, all of you are to set off at the same time. 1, 2, 3. The third count had only just been heard, and shoo, 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 shoo. Every participant shot forward. Over 100 people ringed the foot of the hill. With 32 paths from the very start, they naturally sought to avoid powerful opponents as much as possible. Moreover, each path was exceptionally narrow and could only allow one person to pass. Thus, if one wished to advance, the only choice was to first remove the person in front. For this brief span, they were like thirsty horses fighting for a mouthful of spring water. Fierce beyond measure. Shu, only a tiny figure was seen streaking ahead, the first to reach the foot of the hill at a speed that left all mouths agape. That figure flung the runner up behind by nearly half the distance and began to ascend the hill. It was Hu Niu. Pooh! Everyone choked, 10,000 curses flashing through their minds. When Feng Yan first appeared as a spiritual ocean tier elite, all had been stunned, thinking it certain he would seize first place. When Yan Tianzhao likewise appeared as a spiritual ocean tier elite, all judged the championship would most likely be contested by Feng Yan and Yan Tianzhao alone. Yet when the competition began, without the slightest doubt, all felt an unforeseen mishap had struck. The little girl whom everyone had thought was merely here to play had actually rushed forth at a speed they could only admire. So fast they had not even the chance to stop her. No wonder the Rain Emperor had permitted Hu Niu to participate. This little girl had to be in the Gushing Spring tier. Damn it! A 5 or 6-year-old in the Gushing Spring tier. All were so astonished their facial muscles twitched uncontrollably. What kind of concept was this? At 5 or 6, most were probably still playing with mud, weren't they? Ordinarily, awakening the spirit base would usually happen after 10 years of age, yet this little girl was astonishingly already in the Gushing Spring tier. Moreover, her speed was so swift that even Feng Yan and Yan Tianzhao could only watch as she raced past them. The envoys from the 8 nations exchanged glances, and each saw the other's mouths gaping wide enough to fit 3 eggs. Was Rain Country specialized in producing monsters? Feng Yan and Yan Tianzhao both moved. One shot out a silver blade, while the other cast out green, dense smoke. Yet neither attack could catch up to Hu Niu. When everyone else reached the foot of the hill, Hu Niu had already reached the peak. What's the point of continuing to race then? They hadn't even started competing and the tournament's already over. Wah! Hu Niu suddenly halted, spun around and planted her hands on her waist. Her ferocious nature burst forth in full, and she proclaimed loudly, "You built this road. Aside from Ling Han, no one else can pass." Pooh, everyone choked once more. This time, however, it was not from shock, but from laughter. Feng Yan and the rest were briefly stunned, then hurriedly broke into a run. Since Hu Nu had no intention of being the first to reach the peak and was leaving this chance to Ling Han, then there was no need for them to hold back. Was there? All the others fought to enter the 32 paths, and the first round of battle began. Peng, peng, peng. Everyone moved, intent on becoming the first to climb. Thus, they had to deal with the person in front of them. Each path was like a single log bridge that could not accommodate more than one person. In mere moments, a few dozen were immediately forfeited as bodies were flung away. Only 32 remained to continue advancing. Yet the single log bridge very soon merged with another, and 32 paths became 16. Another 16 were mercilessly forfeited. They were flung away, their bodies falling down through the air. Next, 8 competitors would emerge from the remaining 16. Only 8 remained. Aside from Feng Yan and Yan Tianzhao, these two regarded as the popular candidates for the champion, there was also Ling Han, Zhao Huan, Can Ye, Liu Yutong, Huang Zitao, and Qian Wuyong. The third imperial prince did not participate because of his position. The eldest imperial prince did not participate either, as he had surpassed the age restriction. Ling Han actually managed to pass as well. This caused quite a number to be puzzled. Wasn't this fellow only in the first layer of the gushing spring tier? Setting aside that he could not rival Feng Yan and Yan Tianzhao, even among the gushing spring tier, he would be considered the weakest. So how was he so powerful? After all, not many had actually witnessed Feng Yan and Ling Han exchange blows at the Lu residence that day. Otherwise, they would not have been so shocked. Ling Han was also a formidable opponent, all right? Feng Yan and Yan Tianzhao were exceedingly coordinated. They each occupied one side so that they would only meet in the finals when 2 paths merged into one. This let them avoid encountering each other beforehand, which might lead to both being forfeited. Feng Yan's next opponent was Huang Zitao, and as expected, he flung Huang Zitao out of the competition with a single blow and entered the 4th path. Yan Tianzhao's opponent was Liu Yutong. He merely gave a light wave of his hand and said, "Apologies, big sister Yutong," and he forced Liu Yutong downhill. Can Yi faced Qian Wuyong. With a single sweep of his saber, that 5 flashes of saber chi danced wildly. Qian Wuyong gave only a muffled humph. A splatter of blood gushed from his chest, and he too was forced downhill. Lastly, it was Ling Han against Zhao Huan. Zhao Huan was one of the 3 core disciples of Huyang Academy. Moreover, he ranked 2nd, so he was even stronger than Can Ye. Rumors said that when he was born, an unnatural phenomenon appeared as golden light lit up half the imperial city. Leaving aside whether this truly happened, the present Zhao Huan indeed possessed a terrifying aura. His eyes were sharp as dragons, and he was steeped in domineering air. He laughed loudly and said, "Apologies, Grandmaster Ling." He struck with a punch, his fist wrapped in golden radiance, shooting toward Ling Han like a true falling star, intending to defeat Ling Han and seize the 4th path. Maybe not. Ling Han likewise hurled a punch, charging at Zhao Huan without any fancy moves. Peng! A thunderous bang rang out, and the whole hill shook. Then Zhao Huan was seen flung away. So far. Someone stared into the distance. Zhao Huan had already become a tiny black dot. In an instant, he was already 1,000 feet away. Ling Han claimed the 4th path and the final position.